your engine. People always asking me about used Lincolns. Are they decent cars? Well, here's a $500 2002 LS. Let's see if it was worth $500. Now, they sold quite a few of them, man, other than a little ding on the front here. You can see the body's still in pretty good shape. The sunroof still works. Still got the fancy wheels. Classic rear wheel drive. And it's got the big gangster trunk. You can fit all kinds of things. In this case, the door cards and other things are in here. That's because it was leaking in the rain and he's trying to find out where the leaks came from. They'll go back in. And yeah, the leather's cracking. That's typical on the Lincoln. But you can see, it's got a lot of space. There's no arguing that. The AC doesn't work anymore because the guy that sold it to him kind of ripped him off. He obviously filled it up with refrigerant before I sold it to him, and it lasted one day. I mean, it was easy for me to figure out. I just took my gauges up and saw that there was hardly any refrigerant left. It leaked out. And in the case of these, they're notorious for having the evaporators leak in the dash, which is well over $1,000 job. So it looks like this is going to be an air-conditioned car, air-conditioned by the air outside, by rolling the windows down. The windows and the sunroof still work. You can get plenty of wind inside there. But when you look under the hood, it's got that Ford V8 engine. These are extremely dependable engines. And the transmission, same thing. They're extremely dependable. They can run basically forever if you keep oil in them. Now, I scanned it, it had a couple trouble codes, but it was mainly for the speed sensor system because, as you can see, this baby's going 160 miles an hour standing still. Start it up and take it for a spin. As you can see, that V8 starts right up. Got to fiddle with the shifter a little to get it in reverse. That's showing its age, but it still goes backwards. And as you can see, even though I got the windows open, it's a pretty smooth vehicle. Still rides smooth, stops fine, and with all the mileage it's got on it, still handles pretty good. And let's see what that massive V8 can do. We'll step on the gas. It still burns out, shifts smooth. This thing's got tons of power left. It's a pretty quick, smooth riding vehicle still, but it's still smooth and still handles good. Hey, for a $500 car, you get on a highway in this thing, you can cruise all day long. Now, in my mechanics line of business, we often call this a lawnmower car, because you look inside, it's all beat up and taken apart, but with that huge trunk, a lot of people that do lawn care, they'll buy a car like this for $500, throw the lawnmower in the trunk, maybe throw some of the blowers in the back seat, and I've seen these things go another 10 years mowing people's lawns. Because let's face it, you're mowing lawns, you're gonna get really hot anyways. What's the point of having AC? You're used to it. Roll the windows down, go from lawn to lawn, mow it around. I've had lots of customers sell their old ones to their own lawn mowing guys that come every week because they needed a dependable car. Hey, for $500, this is a great lawnmower special. But look, the chrome is still shining. Just when you're looking at a car like this, don't make the mistake some people make and they'll buy it and then they'll put a whole bunch of money in it. They're not worth a whole bunch of money. And like I said, you could easily spend 3 times what you paid for the car just fixing the AC leak. So there's things that you live with and things that you live without. And of course, if you lived in Alaska, you wouldn't care about the air conditioning. So up north, I've got friends that actually come down here to Texas. They buy cars like this. They take them up north, then they sell it for $4,000 or $5,000 because they don't have any rust on them. This one has always been a Texas car. It's clean as a whistle, rust-wise. It is not going to fall apart. And these solid frame bodies on these things, man, they can last forever. As long as they don't rust. Being a larger car, they're no gas misers, especially in town. But on the highway, these things generally get around 20 or so miles a gallon, driving 65 miles an hour. Well, you know, you pay $500 for the car. What the heck, 20 miles a gallon on the highway, as smooth as this thing is? That's perfectly fine. And anyways, if it's going to be a lawnmower car, you're not going to put that many miles on it anyway. Well, as old as it is, the paint's actually held up quite well. It's not peeling off like the Honda paint when they had all the paint peel off in the early 2000s. And the wheels are still in excellent shape. And the chrome in the back is still in excellent shape. Rides good, stops good, idles smooth, has tons of acceleration. As you can see, it'll even burn rubber in this thing. For $500, hey, you can't go wrong, except for the air conditioning not working, which is a big minus here in Houston. And let's face it, once the door cards are put back in, it'll look a lot nicer inside. The other ones are resting in the back seat. Half of them in the trunk, half of them in the back seat. Now, if you want the truth about this particular car, if the engine oil was changed the transmission fluid, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing was still running 10 years from now. You probably wouldn't like to know AC here in Houston, but if you move somewhere else, you might not even care about that. It's solid frame, no rust. For $500, hey, it's a decent car. Let's face it, 500 bucks isn't much these days. If you could buy something like this and drive it for 10 years, hey, you're getting your money's worth out of the thing. You got solid engines, solid transmissions, rear wheel drive. It was a luxury car in its time. Now, it's a $500 luxury car. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Master 88 YT says saw a GMC Jimmy going for sale for 250 bucks. They said the chassis was snapped in half. It's a good deal? Well, that's for them. If the chassis is snapped in half, it's worth practically nothing. Odds are it's a rusted piece of junk. Don't waste any money on that. If it's snapped in half, you look at it and everything's rusted in the frame. Now, if something weird happened, like a giant Monty Python 20-ton weight fell on it and broke the middle, you want to weld it back together. Guys do all kinds of welding stuff, but generally, if they're snapped in half, the whole thing's rotten and it's not worth anything at all. Guys that fix up old vehicles, they check the frame first. And if the frame's clean, doesn't matter if the rest is crap, they'll say, well, the frame's good, I'll go ahead and buy it, I'll fix it. Because if the frame's rotten, they got to buy another frame. They got to take everything and do what's called a frame-off restoration. It's generally more money than the vehicle's worth when you're done with it. Tramatano says, Scotty, do you think $1,700 is a good deal rebuilding a motor on a 97 Suburban? Body's in good, or should I replace with the Jasper engine for $2,000 plus labor? Go the Jasper engine. These guys that say they rebuild them, half the time, they don't know what the heck they're doing. Jasper's been rebuilding them for decades and decades. They know what they're doing. It's a common V8 engine. Go that route. Get it right. If you're going to go through the trouble of fixing it, do it right. Don't ever rebuild engines and stuff half-assedly. No, you want to do them right, or don't do them at all. Guys, oh, we rebuilt this. No, they didn't. They just slapped a few parts in and put it back together. Jasper, they do a pretty good job. Abdullahi says, I always thought Acuras would require expensive maintenance since they're luxury Hondas. Well, here's the thing. They're no different to maintain than Honda to maintain. And they're like Hondas. They can last a long time. But when they age 150,000 or more, 10, 12 years old, they are very expensive to fix when they do actually break. The parts cost more. They're more luxurious. They have higher parts prices. They are harder to work on because they're generally higher tech than Hondas. They always put the highest tech in their fancy cars to try it out, and they cost a lot of money. Plus, they're Acura dealers, and they're just like Toyota and Lexus. They got deals in certain areas that the Honda dealers aren't supposed to sell the Acura parts, even though they might be exactly the same. So you're going to pay more for the parts, too. Just realize that. They're great cars, but as they age and get really old, they're going to cost a lot more money to fix than a Honda. But maintain them, that's no difference. It's just Honda. The oil changes, stuff like that. It's no different. Hermit TV Junkie says, what are the odds I'm going to get scammed buying off Craigslist? Depends on where you are, but these days it can be quite high. I have had numerous customers go, and the Craigslist guy pretends he's selling his car, or it's his friend's Joe's car, and in reality, it's a used car lot, and they're just paying people that have jobs or no jobs anywhere to sell cars on their lot, and you call them up and they'll say, oh, where are you? Well, I'm in Houston. Oh, well, I'm in Galveston. We'll meet in the middle in Baytown at the Denny's, and we'll sell you a car. Don't ever fall for that crap. You want to see the title. You want to see whose name it's in. You want to see if it's a salvage title. You want to figure out, do these people actually own the car, or are they selling it for somebody else? And there are a lot of scams out there these days. You can get a good car from a person, no questions asked, but you got to be real careful using something like Craigslist. Plus, a lot of people these days are people scamming people and robbing them, so you always want to do it in an open place where there's a lot of people, where people aren't going to be able to do something like inside a restaurant, not just out in the parking lot. Use common sense when it comes to meeting people these days. There's some crazies out there. Giovanni Vasquez says, your opinion on the 2000 Ford Explorer, are they reliable? Well, yes and no. A lot of that depends on the mileage. They had a certain lifespan. They get 120, 130, they generally start to fall apart. But if you find an Explorer with a V8 engine, I got a customer who has got 250K on it, that sucker's still driving down the road like a charm. So if it's a V8 engine, it's much better than the one with a V6. Now, they don't last forever. The air conditionings break, the transmissions go out. But if you can find a lower mileage one, I've had customers buy them cheap for $800, $900, sometimes drive them 4 or 5 years without putting too much money into them. So depends on the mileage, what engine is in it, and how it was taken care of. Sean Don 8 says, '06 Honda Civic Coupe, 120,000 miles is a good car. They can be great cars. I've seen them with 360,000 miles on them. But, of course, when they're older, now, that thing is what? 15 years old. It's a 15-year-old car. Don't ever pay much for a 15-year-old car with 120,000 miles. Maybe it'll go to 300. Maybe it won't. Odds are it could. but don't pay too much. I often see people way up. Oh, it's a Honda, it's great. It's still an old car. You got no guarantee from the people. The only way you're going to really have to pay too much is if you got lousy credit and you're financing somewhere, then you're screwed. Because when they're financing you, you're going to pay way too much for the car because they're gambling that you're going to pay them back, and it's not one lump sum like you were buying it from a private individual. If you could find one from a private individual, especially in a estate sale or something, could be a great buy. Dealers always charge too much. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.